Hello, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Jess.
She's the traumatized.
And she's the abandoned.
And welcome to our podcast, where we talk about true crime, spooky things, and everything in between.
And today we are talking about deadly engineering. And mine's going to be a little twisty. I'm kind of excited about it.
Ooh, twisty.
A little twisty. Because I had no idea. It actually got my idea from my grandfather.
Yeah.
So that was really cute.
So
Because
cool.
he is a contractor. So I was like, hey, deadly engineering. He was like, well, here's something. I was like, I had no idea that was a thing. So yeah. How was your week?
That's good. Did I do anything this week? I went grocery shopping.
Oh,
Is that exciting? I don't know.
it's a thing that adults do.
It's
So
something adults do.
good for us. It can be exciting. Did you have fun?
Yeah. I mean, I had to take Beanie, but he was really good throughout it. Probably spent a little extra money because he picked out a lot of snacks for himself, but that's okay. It was good. And then we went to the grocery store, and then whatever we can't find at the grocery store, we go to Walmart to get like the odds and ends.
Right.
And I may have let him pick out a few extra toys.
Oh my gosh.
Well, first of all, I was like, all right, we're going to go to Walmart now because he wanted to be done shopping. I was like,
Right.
we got to go to Walmart still. And I was like, I'll let you pick out one toy. He's like, I don't want toys. I was like, okay. So what do you want?
Okay.
And so we decided on coloring stuff. Well, then
Aww.
I had to get like chapstick and stuff like in the makeup section, which is by the toy section. So we ended up going to the toy
Oh.
section, and he saw.
So then he saw things.
some things he
Okay.
wanted. So
Yeah. Fair.
So did some shopping this week, and then
Nice.
editing and stuff. So yeah, it's been a chill week. I got to play video games for like an hour last night.
That's exciting.
Go
Go you.
Right. Oh, we got the treadmill up and running. Not
You
up
did.
and running, but we moved it from
Walking.
the garage into like a workout room. So I've been walking every day, trying to get my health better and stuff. That's been fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sore leg muscles all week, but here we are.
Walking's good though. Walking's good.
How was your week?
Good. I was trying to figure out what I did.
You had a whole like
Good.
5 minutes to think about it.
I was listening to you. I wasn't thinking about what I did. It was really, I mean, it's good. Very relaxing, chill, didn't do anything. I think that's it. I really don't think I have anything else. Like everything's been really chill. I've relaxing, like when it's nice outside. Like yesterday I went for a drive. Like I'm one of those people who just go for a drive now with like my windows down because it was like 80 degrees. I had my windows down, hair down, like sunglasses on, just vibing to some good music. There's a song that is like my anthem right now. And if you're not going through it, it might not mean as much to you. But it's called What He Didn't Do by Carly Pierce. Have you heard of it?
Mm.
It is so good. And it is like my jam now. Every time I get in the car, I like listen to it. And I'm just like, because it's literally perfect. But yeah. So my week was really chill. I didn't like nothing to report. Like, I mean, I start my job at the end of April and I've been out till then. So I did get a hotspot. I got a hotspot. So that's what I'm using for
Nice.
my computer now. So hopefully internet. It's been a struggle. It's been a real bad struggle. Not gonna lie.
Anyway, is that it?
That's it. Super quick, super easy, and
Super
don't got
boring
nothing going on.
weeks. Grocery shopping.
You know, taking a drive. But you know what? I like those weeks better than our weeks that are just
crazy.
It's nice. I feel like after the beginning of this year, we're owed some
A slowdown.
chill weeks. Yeah. Like, do you want to hear the fun fact of the day?
Yes, I do.
Did you know that all pandas that are located in the world are on a loan from China?
Really?
So, because the pandas became endangered species, so they started like loaning them out so that they could get like kind of make more babies. But yeah, they're all technically on a loan from China.
So do they have to
belong China.
pay every month to
I
have them?
don't know. Or it's like a like maybe I don't know. I don't know if you'd pay for them. Probably not. Maybe.
Interesting.
Google it.
So all pandas in the world are owned by China.
So China loans pandas to a zoo in the United States or another country, and the zoo pays an annual fee of up to $500,000 or $1 million a year.
So that's why zoo prices are so expensive. They had to pay for the pandas.
China began to offer pandas to other nations only on a 10-year lease. This lease includes a fee of up to $1 million per year, and a provision that any cubs born during that lease period are also the property of the People's Republic of China.
Wow.
So yeah, wild.
Really wild.
I did not know that.
Neither
So,
did I.
Hope you didn't either. Fun fact of the day. No, pandas do not belong to China. That was double negative. Anyway, so what are you talking about today?
So today I'm going to be talking about the Sultana disaster.
Okay. Never heard of this.
Yeah, neither had I. So on April 27th, 1865, thousands of Union soldiers, having just been released from captivity, were on board the Sultana, a commercial side-wheel steamboat. They probably felt relieved that the Civil War was ending and that they were finally able to go home. But for many of them, their trip would be cut short. Dun, dun, dun.
We're losers. Anyway, go on.
Little bit of background. You're laughing out now because as the story continues,
it gets dark.
It gets bad.
Oh no.
And
Okay.
I had to leave some stuff out because I was like, damn. Okay.
Oh, it's that bad. Okay.
So the Sultana was a privately owned side-wheel steamboat built in Cincinnati, Ohio in February 1863. So we're way back there, obviously, the Civil War.
Yep. Yeah.
A relatively large boat, the Sultana stood 3 decks tall and measured 260 feet long and approximately 70 feet wide, a little shorter than a football field and about half as wide. Her 2 side mountain paddle wheels were driven by 4 fire tube boilers. The power of the boilers came with risk. The water levels in the fire tubes had to be carefully maintained at all times. Basically, water levels had to be maintained at all times, so there's no overheating and stuff, you know what I mean?
Right.
The areas between the many flues clogged easily, especially since dirty river water carried much sediment and were difficult to clean. So basically, the water that they used for these boilers were the river water that they were on. Dropping water levels could cause hot spots, leading to metal fatigue, significantly increasing the risk of an explosion. Since most steamboats of the time were constructed of wood covered with paint and varnish,
That sounds like a horrible idea.
fires were a significant concern.
Right? Oh my gosh.
There's no
know
foreshadowing
why.
at all in this
Don't know
paragraph. The Sultana spent her first 2 years carrying troops and supplies up and down the Mississippi River for the Union Army until Vicksburg, Mississippi was captured in July 1863.
Okay.
Then she carried cotton, manufactured goods, and civilian passengers between New Orleans and her home port of St. Louis, Missouri. In the spring of 1864, the original owners sold the boat to a conglomerate of St. Louis businessmen, including 34-year-old James Cass Mason, who would captain the Sultana. My next section is called The Bribe.
Okay. The bribe?
The Bribe.
Okay.
So, on the morning of April 15th, while the Sultana was sitting in Cairo, Illinois, word came over the telegraph wire that President Abraham Lincoln had been assassinated while watching a play. Knowing that telegraph communication with the South had been cut off because of the war, Captain Mason headed towards New Orleans. This article says, hoping for fame as the first to be the first boat to spread the news of Lincoln's death to the South. So it's saying which I can kind of see him being like, oh, let me grab all these newspapers, run down there, and everyone will remember my name for telling them about the president's death. I can totally see this in this guy.
Yep.
When Captain Mason stopped at Vicksburg, Mississippi, he was approached by Captain Reuben Benton Hatch, the chief quartermaster in Vicksburg. Hatch, knowing that Mason was hurting for money because of a lack of commerce, had an offer for Mason. Thousands of recently paroled Union soldiers who had just recently been held captive by the Confederates in rebel prisons were being released and sent home.
Oh,
basically just
interesting.
prison
Okay.
camps that they had set up for prisoners of war.
Right. That's so crazy to think about. Like, we had prisoners of war. Like, I don't know. It's just crazy to me.
Steamboats were taking the men home, and the U.S. government was paying so much per man per 100 miles to carry them home. Hatch proposed to Mason that he could guarantee that the Sultana got at least 1,000 men, worth about $2,500, or more than $40,000 in today's money.
Wow. Yeah, I take that bribe. I take that bribe.
If Captain Mason would give him a kickback, so he would give them the soldiers if Mason came back and like paid him after that he got paid. You know what I mean? Like he would get a sum of the payment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Even though both men knew that the legal carrying capacity of the Sultana was just, can you guess? 376 passengers and 80 to 85 crew.
Okay.
Mason agreed to the bribe. But first, he continued downriver.
No.
He continued downriver, spreading the news of the assassination. Because, you know, that's important. Before coming back to get the Union soldiers. So I think he went all the way down to New Orleans and then started his way back. On April 23rd, 1865, the Sultana limped back into Vicksburg from downriver.
Right. Okay. At least it made it.
Well, she had sprung a leak in one of her 4 boilers and it needed to be repaired. While the paroled prisoners, primarily from the states of Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia, were brought from the parole camp to Sultana, a mechanic was brought down to work on the leaky boiler. Although the mechanic wanted to cut out and replace a ruptured seam, Mason knew such a job would take a few days and cost him his precious load of prisoners.
Oh, come on, Mason. Don't do it.
Instead, Mason and his chief engineer, Nathan Wintringer, convinced the mechanic to make temporary repairs, hammering back the bulged boiler plate and riveting a patch of lesser thickness over the seam. Instead of taking 2 or 3 days, the temporary repair took only 1. And while the work was being done to fix the boiler, the recently released soldiers began showing up. Instead of 1,000 soldiers, as Captain Hatch had suggested, the Sultana got almost 2,000 men.
What?
They crowded together in every nook and cranny of the steamboat as Captains Mason and Hatch knew more men meant more money.
Well, and more weight. Hello? Greedy mother.
Very late in the evening of April 24th, 1865, the Sultana finally backed away from the Vicksburg wharf and started upriver on her final journey. She carried on board a total of 2,137 people, 1,960 ex-prisoners, 22 guards, 85 crew members, and 70 paying passengers.
Poor 70 people. Did they know? Did they know what was happening?
The overcrowded Sultana moved steadily upriver against a strong spring flood current. On the morning of April 26, 1865, Sultana stopped at Helena, Arkansas, where a photographer, Thomas W. Banks, captured an image of the overcrowded steamboat.
Have that picture?
I do.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
You can just see. That's all people.
Jeez.
In case you were confused, is what you're looking at. Like even on the back, you just see sticks
that thing is
of
so
people.
weighted down. That's so like, oh no. Why?
Near 7 p.m., the Sultana reached Memphis, where about 300,000 pounds of sugar was removed from the hold. The top-heavy vessel, which had tilted quite often despite the extra weight down in the hold, would tilt even more now.
Because they just removed all their base weight?
Well, just hold on.
Okay. Yeah.
Near 1 a.m. Near 1 a.m. on April 27th, after unloading the sugar and taking on a new load of coal,
Okay.
the Sultana finally started on the last leg of the journey towards Cairo, Illinois. I do not know how much coal was loaded on. I would assume maybe the same amount or not. I don't know.
Okay.
And in Cairo, Illinois is where the men would be transferred to trains and taken to Camp Chase near Columbus, Ohio for like mustering out. So like they would all be taken to this military base and then they'll march out from there where they need to go.
Okay.
Around 2 a.m., when the Sultana was about 7 miles north of Memphis, 3 of the 4 boilers suddenly exploded.
What? Oh, and now there's coal in the...
I don't mean to laugh, but the horrendous explosion came from the upper back part of the boilers and ripped upward through the heart of the Sultana. The blast went up at about a 45-degree angle, ripping apart the center of the main cabin, destroying the middle of the Texas cabin, which is the section of the steamboat that includes the crew's quarters.
Okay.
And shearing off the back 2/3 of the pilot house, instantly killing Captain Mason and probably a bunch of other people.
I mean, this is your fault.
Buckle up.
Okay.
The violent explosion flung some deck passengers into the water and blew a gaping 25 to 30 foot hole in the steamer. Since the explosion had not come from the furnace fireboxes, the Sultana did not burst into flames immediately. With the loss of 3 of the 4 huge boilers, the towering smokestacks lost their support and toppled. Are you buckled? The right smokestack fell into the giant hole in the center of the Sultana, while the left stack crashed heavily onto the center of the crowded hurricane deck, smashing it down onto the equally crowded second deck underneath.
Jeez. Oh no.
Dozens and dozens of soldiers were crushed to death between the 2 decks, although some were saved by the support of the heavy railings outlining the openings of the main stairway.
Oh my gosh. This is insane.
Yeah. As the debris from the wrecked up decks slid down into the exposed fireboxes, the center of the Sultana slowly burst into flames. It was not long before the entire middle of the steamboat was in flames.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh. Wow. So crazy.
Many people had been catapulted into the river by the force of the explosion, while hundreds more fought to get away from the spreading flames and scraps of lumber to keep them afloat in the water. And people trapped in the wreckage cried out for assistance. Approximately 400 men and women had sought safety on the bow, while the flames from the fire pushed towards the back of the boat.
Wow.
But soon the boat shifted in the water because, remember, the pilot house is gone. There's nothing steering this ship. It's just floating. It's a fiery floating boat in the middle of a
Ball
river.
Of fire.
Yeah.
Right. Terrifying.
So the boat shifted in the water and all of the flames were now headed towards all of those people who had sought safety.
No.
And most of the floating debris was already taken by the first group of people who had jumped ship. So it was complete chaos as people fought in the water and pushed and shoved, trying their best to survive. Shortly after the explosion of the Sultana, the steamboat Bostana came downriver upon the harrowing scene. The crew and passengers immediately tossed any and all floating items into the water to help survivors stay afloat, while also rescuing approximately 150 people. Hoping to raise the alarm and get other steamboats to rush to the scene, Captain John Watson decided to head downriver to Memphis to spread the alarm. At Memphis, the other steamboats were already aware of the disaster, though, because Sultana victims had begun floating past the docked steamboats in the Memphis wharf calling out for help.
Oh my gosh.
So just as a reminder, like the Mississippi River at this point in time was like over flooded because of the spring like melting. And so it was like over flooded and kind of rapid moving, I think.
Okay.
Is my understanding. So upriver, close to the burning Sultana, hundreds had managed to float to flooded treetops or rooftops of submerged barns or other outbuildings. And as the sun began to increase. The morning darkness, the surviving soldiers, civilians, and crew awaited rescue. Eventually, the hulk of the Sultana drifted about 6 miles to the west bank of the river and sank around 7 a.m.
That's so crazy.
Passengers who survived the initial explosion had to risk their lives in the icy spring runoff of the Mississippi. Many died of drowning or hypothermia. Bodies of victims continued to be found downriver for months, some as far as Vicksburg.
Wow.
Many bodies were never recovered.
Oh, that's so crazy. Ugh.
So the aftermath.
Oh, good.
In total, 786 people had to be rescued and were taken to 5 hospitals and the soldiers' home, a sort of Civil War USO.
How many?
786.
Okay.
Most of those rescued were suffering from burns and broken bones.
Right.
Almost all were suffering from exhaustion and exposure in the frigid spring water.
That's true. It's no, yeah, okay.
Of approximately 50 women and children that were aboard the Sultana, only 4 or 5 women survived. 2 were civilian passengers. The other crew members, all of the children perished.
Damn.
Only 31 of the 786 people in the hospitals or soldiers' home died after rescue. So, due to their injuries, only 31 passed. Only 21 civilian passengers survived out of 70, while only 28 crew members lived out of 85. Only 6 guards survived out of 22, and only 913 ex-prisoners of war survived out of 1,960. A total of 2,137 souls aboard the Sultana on April 27th, 1865. There were 963 survivors and 1,169 deaths, giving the Sultana the ominous distinction of being the worst maritime disaster in American history to this very day. So, what happened? The investigation.
I mean,
we know what happened.
We know what happened. Go on, though.
Within days of the Sultana explosion, the U.S. government was investigating the disaster. Questions needed answers. Who was responsible for placing so many men on one boat, and what had caused the explosion?
Yep.
The official cause of the Sultana disaster was determined to be the mismanagement of water levels in the boilers, exacerbated by the fact that the vessel was severely overloaded and top-heavy. The steamboat made her way north, following the twists and turns of the river. She listed severely from side to side. Her 4 boilers were interconnected and mounted side by side, so that if the boat tipped sideways, water would tend to run out of the highest boiler. So is that making sense?
It does. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So the fires still going against the empty boiler created hot spots. When the boat tipped the other way, water rushing back into the empty boiler would hit the hot spots, flash instantly to steam, creating a sudden surge in pressure. This effect of careening could have been minimalized by maintaining high water levels in the boilers. The official inquiry found that the boilers exploded because of the combined effects of careening, low water levels, and the faulty repair made a few days earlier.
Yeah. You mean like when he refused to wait a couple days? Yeah.
The most recent investigation into the cause of the disaster by Pat Jennings, principal engineer of Hartford Steam Boiler Inspection and Insurance Company, which came into existence in 1866 because of the Sultana explosion, determined that 3 main factors led to the disaster. 1, the type of metal used in the construction of the boilers, charcoal hammered number 1, which tends to become brittle with prolonged heating and cooling.
That's not good. Okay.
Charcoal hammered number 1 was no longer used to manufacture boilers after 1879.
Okay.
The second, the use of the sediment-laden Mississippi River water to feed the boilers.
Interesting. Okay.
The sediment tended to settle on the bottom of the boilers or clog between the flues and leave hot spots. And
Okay.
third, the all-around design of the boilers. Sultana had tubular boilers filled with 24 horizontal 5-inch flues. Being so closely packed within a 48-inch diameter, boilers tended to cause the muddy sediment to form hot pockets and were extremely difficult to clean. Tubular boilers were discontinued from use on steamboats plying the lower Mississippi after 2 more steamboats with tubular boilers exploded shortly after the Sultana explosion.
Wow. Okay.
So obviously we can't charge Captain Mason because he died.
Right.
So in January 1866, Captain Frederick Speed, who we've never heard of until this point, had been at the parole camp sending men out to the Sultana. He was put on trial for overloading the Sultana. Captain Speed was found guilty, but after reviewing the case, the judge advocate general of the army overturned the conviction, stating that Captain Hatch was responsible for the overcrowding, which we know is true. Reuben Hatch, however, ignored 3 subpoenas and was nowhere to be found when the U.S. Marshal was sent to arrest him.
Oh, he gone.
And was
he gone.
Yeah, and was therefore never brought to trial.
Wow.
Ultimately, nobody was ever held accountable or brought to justice for the 1,169 victims of the Sultana disaster.
Jeez. That's insane.
And I have one more side note, which after disappearing beneath the waters of the Mississippi, the Sultana was eventually covered with sand and silt until she was buried beneath the mud on the bottom of the Mississippi River. When the river changed course and moved to the east, the buried Sultana was left under an Arkansas soybean field approximately 2 miles from the river. In 1982, Memphis attorney and Sultana historian Jerry O. Potter located the buried remains of the Sultana. To this date, she still remains dormant under the Arkansas soil, a fitting memorial to the men and women and children that were aboard the Sultana.
Wow.
But is it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's kind of just buried. I feel like you should make a memorial or something.
But yeah, so if there were still bodies aboard the Sultana,
Maybe.
they're just in the middle of an Arkansas soybean field right now. How insane is that?
That's crazy.
But that's the story of the Sultana disaster.
I've never heard of that. That's
right.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool.
Insane.
Cheated a little bit and did a maritime disaster, but
it was because of engineering.
It's absolutely both. I know how much you love a good maritime disaster. Meanwhile, these are the 2 topics I cannot wrap my head around for some reason. There's a new show that I was watching on, because he has Dish, so I'm actually watching live TV, which is
right.
What is that? And it was unexplained engineering disasters. So now I'm gonna look it up because one of them was a sinkhole opened up in the middle of a hospital.
Oh, insane.
I was like, what? Interesting idea. Okay. Anywho, so that was your story?
That was my story.
Woohoo!
What are you gonna be talking about today?
Terrifying.
Right?
So I'm switching it up a little bit. I'm going to be doing the Hoover Dam. Now, you may be wondering what happened to the Hoover Dam. Nothing yet, but...
Yet? What do you mean yet? Oh, God.
But no, like I said, I was talking to my grandfather about this, and he was like, well, a lot of people died making that dam. And I was like, what? He's like, a lot of people died creating that dam. And I'm like, I gotta look into this. And actually, he's not wrong. And I kind of want to do a what if situation. What if the Hoover Dam failed?
Oh.
What would happen? Right? So I did a little research on that. So that's going to be part of my story. Anyway, so we're going to do the Hoover Dam. Never been to it. It's
me neither.
Massive, right?
Where is it
I
at?
I need to Colorado.
Colorado.
It floods up the Colorado River. Yeah. But we'll get into that too, because it actually flows into a couple different states, which is a big issue. It wasn't a big issue. Anywhooser. All right. So, brief overview. 85 years after its completion, the Hoover Dam is still considered an engineering marvel. It is named in honor of President Herbert Hoover, who played a crucial role in its creation. Today, the Hoover Dam controls the flooding of the Colorado River and irrigates to over 1,500,000 acres of land. It provides water to over 16 million people.
Dang.
Lake Mead, which is the lake that was created by the dam, supports recreational activities and provides habitats to fish and wildlife. Power generated by the dam provides energy to over 500,000 homes. And the Hoover Compromise still governs how the water is shared. So we'll get into the Hoover Compromise a little later. So some history.
Mm-hmm.
For many years, residents of American Southwest sought to tame the Colorado River to prevent flooding and provide irrigation to transform the arid region into a fertile cropland. The greatest obstacle to constructing a dam was the issue of water right allocation among the 7 states that the Colorado drainage basin. So they wanted to allocate where it went into.
Mm-hmm.
It became evident after meetings held at San Diego, Tucson, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, and Denver that a formal agreement for the equitable apportionment of water between the states was needed. I had to practice that line. Herbert Hoover had visited the lower Colorado region in years before World War and was familiar with its problems and potential for development. Upon becoming Secretary of Commerce in 1921, Hoover proposed the construction of a dam on the Colorado River. In addition to flood control and irrigation, it would provide a dependable supply of water for Los Angeles and Southern California, which experienced droughts often. And the plan was that it would recover its costs through the sale of hydroelectric power it was generated. So basically it was gonna get all them, they would have, it was like a loan and they would get the money back eventually anyway.
Mm-hmm.
In 1921, the state legislatures of Colorado Basin authorized commissioners to negotiate an interstate agreement. Congress authorized President Harding to appoint a representative for the federal government to serve as chair of the Colorado River Commission, and on December 17th, 1921, Harding appointed Hoover for that role. So he was actually the commissioner before he was the president.
Okay.
The upstream states feared that the downstream states would be allocated the vast majority of the water due to their rapidly developing agricultural and power needs. Hoover suggested a compromise that the water be divided without individual state quotas. The resulting Colorado River Compact was signed on November 24th, 1922. It split the river basin up into upper and lower halves, with the states within each region deciding amongst themselves how the water would be allocated. So basically split it evenly.
Mm-hmm.
Bills calling for federal funding to build the dam were introduced by Congressman Phil Swing and Senator Hiram Johnson between 1922 and 1928, all of which were rejected. They were like, nah, we're not funding this. The bill did pass, however, on December 18th, 1928. The final Swing-Johnson bill, titled the Boulder Canyon Project Act, was largely written by Hoover and Secretary of Interior Hubert Work. That bill did pass on December 18th, 1928, and President Herbert Hoover, now president, signed a proclamation on June 25th, 1929, making the compact effective. So, on July 7th, 1930, construction of the Hoover Dam began. Over the next 5 years, a total of 21,000 men would work ceaselessly to produce what would be the largest dam of its time, as well as one of the largest man-made structures in the world. Once the preparations were made, the Hoover Dam's construction sprinted forward. The contractors finished their work 2 years ahead of schedule and millions of dollars under budget. Soon after the dam was authorized, increasing numbers of unemployed people converged on southern Nevada. Las Vegas, then a small city of some 5,000 people, saw between 10,000 and 20,000 unemployed people descend on it. A government camp was established for surveyors and other personnel near the dam site. This soon became surrounded by a squatters' camp. Known as McKeersville, the camp was home to men hoping to work on the project, and they were there with their families as well.
Wow.
Which I didn't know this, but apparently squatters camps were known for unemployed people. But I didn't realize because I said I was talking to my grandfather about it, and we even had one over here near a couple mountains near us to work on mines and stuff, because around World War I, there was a lot of unemployed people, and so they would just go and do squatters camps to find work. Mm-hmm. This was the thing. Another camp on the flats along the Colorado River was officially called Williamsville, but was known to its inhabitants as Ragtown. When construction began, 6 companies hired large number of workers. 6 companies is the company name.
Oh, okay. It wasn't 6 companies all working together.
I hate it. No, it's 6 Companies Inc. Hired a large number. It was very confusing at first. Hired a large number of workers with more than 3,000 on payroll by 1932. And with the employment peaking at 5,251 in July of 1934. As a part of the contract, 6 Companies Inc. was to build Boulder City to house the workers. The original timetable called for Boulder City to be built before the dam project began, but President Hoover ordered work on the dam to begin on March 1931 rather than October. So the city wasn't ready. The company built bunkhouses attached to the canyon walls to house the 480 single men at what became known as River Camp. Workers with families were left to provide their own accommodations until Boulder City could be completed. So many just lived in Ragtown, which was the camp.
Mm-hmm.
The site of the Hoover Dam endures extremely hot weather, and the summer of 1931 was especially hot, with the daytime high averaging 119 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is 48.8 degrees Celsius for those of you who
That's
do not do Fahrenheit.
insane.
16 workers and other riverbank residents died of heat exhaustion between June 25th and July 26th of 1931. So 16 workers just died of heat exhaustion.
Jesus.
The Industrial Workers of the World, IWW, or they also called them Wobblies, which I will be calling them Wobblies from now on because that's a lot. Though much reduced from their heyday as militant labor organizers in the early years of the century, hoped to unionize the 16 companies' workers by capitalizing on their discontent. They sent 11 organizers, several of whom were arrested by Las Vegas police. On August 7th, 1931, the company cut wages for all the tunnel workers. Although the workers sent the organizers away, not wanting to be associated with the Wobblies, they formed a committee to represent them with the company. So basically, Wobblies wanted to unionize and then sent people, and they were basically arrested, and then they ended up punishing them, cutting the wages more. So then they didn't want to be associated with the Wobblies, but they sent additional people and formed a committee of their own. The committee drew up a list of demands that evening and presented them to Crow, who was the general superintendent of the job. He was non-committal, is what the quote said. So basically, it was just like, okay, sure, whatever. The workers hoped that Crow would be sympathetic. Instead, he gave a scathing interview to newspaper describing the workers as malcontents. On the morning of the 9th, Crow met with the committee, told them that management refused their demands and was stopping all work and was laying off the entire workforce except for a few office workers and carpenters.
They could afford that.
The workers were given until 5 p.m. to vacate the premises. So they were like, they wanted better work, so they kind of picketed and did a, what is it called?
A strike.
And so Crow was like, they called their bluff and was like, all right, you can all go home. We'll find someone else to work. They were giving until 5 p.m. to vacate the premises. Concerned that a violent confrontation was imminent, most workers took their paychecks and left for Las Vegas to await deployments. 2 days later, the remainder were talked into leaving by law enforcement.
They really did just kick everyone out. They could afford that.
On August 13th, the company began hiring workers again, and 2 days later, the strike was then called off. While the workers received none of their demands, the company guaranteed that there would be no further reduction in wages.
It's like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory thing all over again.
Yeah. Living conditions began to improve as the first residents moved into Boulder City in late 1931.
Woohoo!
However, a second labor action took place in July 1935, so this is 4 years later, as the construction of the dam started to wind down. When the 6 companies' managers altered working times to force workers to take lunch on their own time, workers responded with a strike. Emboldened by Crow's reversal of the lunch decree, workers then raised their demands to include a $1 raise. So Crow was like, fine, whatever, I'll give in. We're almost done. I'll reverse the lunch decree. And they were like, no, just kidding. We want $1 more. The company agreed to ask the federal government to supplement the pay, but no money was forthcoming from Washington, and then the strike ended.
Damn.
Yeah. Okay.
These people struck out twice.
Literally struck out strike. Well, it's because it's like there were, okay, so going back to what I was talking about at the beginning, there were anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 unemployed people that came into the city. They ended up hiring at a max, it was like 2,000. So there weren't lack of people
Okay.
to hire. Like,
I see.
yeah. I'm not saying that you should treat people crappy because I do not think they were treated correctly. However, yeah.
Mm.
All right, we're buckling up. Are we buckled?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean it. We're going to go downhill real fast.
Okay.
All in all, there were 112 deaths reported as associated with the construction of the dam. The first was a Bureau of Reclamation employee, Harold Connolly, who died on May 15th, 1921, after falling from a barge while surveying the Colorado River for an ideal spot for the dam. So this dude was the first one. He was just trying to scope out like where it should be.
Did he fall into the like a canyon or the river or what?
I don't know. He fell from a barge, and a barge is in a river.
Yeah, so he fell in the river.
Mm-hmm. Surveyor John Gregory Tierney drowned on December 20th, 1922 in a flash flood while looking for the ideal spot for the dam. He was also the second person to pass away for this.
So these two people were just looking at the river to see where the dam
And
should
they
go,
died.
and they didn't think to bring like floaties or like
I don't know if it was that
friends.
kind of. So this is like 1980s, okay? No, this is 1930s. They're not
Like tie a
I
rope
don't know
to
if floaties
yourself
are
and
a
tie
thing.
one to a tree, so if you fall in, you aren't going anywhere.
Okay, the official list's final death occurred on December 20th, 1935, when Patrick Tierney, electrician's helper and son of J.G. Tierney, who, if you remember, who just drowned.
Oh, okay.
So his son was the final death,
Oh dear.
who fell from one of the two Arizona side intake towers. So he fell a really long way.
Thanks for clarifying.
It was not the water side.
Oh, good God.
Included in the fatality list are 3 workers who did take their own life on site, 1 in 1932 and 2 in 1933.
I wonder if it's haunted.
I'm sure. Of the 112 fatalities, 91 were 6 company employees. 3 were of the Bureau of Reclamation employees, which again were the 2 that we discussed were trying to look for ideal spots. And 1 was a visitor to the site. The remainder were employees of various contractors, not part of the 6 companies. 96 of the deaths occurred during construction at the site. So of the 112, 96 of them occurred during construction on site. So, I mean, it has to be haunted.
Yeah.
Not included in the official number of fatality were the deaths that were recorded as pneumonia. Workers alleged that this diagnosis was a cover for death from carbon monoxide poisoning brought on by the use of gasoline-fueled vehicles in the diversion tunnels, and as a classification used by 6 companies to avoid paying compensation claims.
Wow. Wow.
The site's diversion tunnels frequently reached 140 degrees Fahrenheit.
What?
Enveloped in thick plumes of vehicle exhaust gases. A total of 42 workers were recorded to have died from pneumonia and were not included in the above total. None were listed as having died from carbon monoxide poisoning.
That's insane.
It's suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
So no deaths of non-workers from pneumonia were recorded in the Boulder City during the construction period. So we don't even know how many people died from pneumonia, which really was carbon monoxide poisoning. Allegedly. So the dam was dedicated in 1935 and the hydroelectric generators went online in 1937. Weird, not so fun fact. In 1947, Congress officially restored Hoover's name to the dam after FDR, Secretary of the Interior, tried to remove it. Today, the Hoover Dam generates enough energy each year to serve over 1 million people and stands in the Hoover Dam artist's Oscar Hanson's word as, this is his quote, a monument to collective genius, exerting itself in community efforts around a common need or ideal. So, what would happen if it failed? Are you ready?
No.
If catastrophe struck the Hoover Dam and it somehow broke, it would be a catastrophic amount of water from Lake Mead and it would just be released. That water would likely cover an area of 10 million acres, 1 foot deep. So it would just instantly flood over 10 million acres up to a foot deep.
Cheaper.
Which is 30 centimeters. To put that area into perspective, the entire state of New Jersey is 9 million acres.
So just the state of New Jersey.
More than.
Yeah.
Downriver towns and cities would see the most damage, which would include the loss of life depending on the amount of warning before the wave. Those towns would include, I'm going to mispronounce these, forgive me, I'm not from the area. Laughlin, Nevada, Needles, California, Lake Havasu, Arizona, and even as far south as Yuma, Arizona, and San Luis Rey, Colorado, which is a border community in Mexico.
I mean, would there even be time to like... Well, it's not like they have tornado sirens out there.
No, they don't have like a dam breaking sign. Maybe they do. I don't know. I don't think they do.
Because like, how would you announce that? Like, I don't think there would be time. I think it would be shorter time than a tornado warning.
Because it would just be a massive wave.
Mm-hmm.
There are also 3 Native American reservations along the Colorado River that would also be affected.
Yikes.
Some speculate the water would spread into the Mojave National Preserve and communities in the southeastern California all the way to the Salton Sea, an area that was routinely flooded by the Colorado River before the dam was built in 1930. Approximately 25 million people depend on water from Lake Mead, and that would be gone.
So the lake would just empty out, you think?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, because it wasn't a lake before. It was just the Colorado River. So that lake is man-made by the dam.
So the river before this was at the bottom level of the dam, and then they built the dam up, and then it created the... Interesting.
And they built the turbines and stuff, yeah. The reservoir, because it's a reservoir, supplies water for the cities of Las Vegas, Henderson, North Las Vegas, and Boulder City, Nevada, as well as municipal and industrial water and irrigation water for the downstream users. The destruction of the irrigation water supplies would also have a devastating effect on farming in the region. Farmers in the Imperial Valley get most of their water from the Colorado River, and these irrigation systems would collapse. Prior to irrigation, the Imperial Valley was a barren desert. It would probably go back to being a desert. Today it is home to more than 500,000 acres of farmland and produces more than $1 billion in fruits and vegetables every year.
Dang. So not only that, it would like provide a shortage in food around the country.
Massive. And then there's the electrical grid.
Oh god.
The hydropower generation is the major reason for building the Hoover Dam. In fact, it not only financed the project, but income from the power generation also continues to pay for the operation, maintenance, and replacement work at the dam. According to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, Hoover Dam generates on average about 4 billion kilowatt hours of hydroelectric power annually for the use of Nevada, Arizona, and California. That is enough to serve 1.3 million people, and that would just be gone. So, a lot of death initially, and then loss of farmland and power. So, insane. Not good. It would be bad. So we're not hoping that ever happens. I did a bonus question, and I want you guys to answer it, and I want you to answer it. Do you think the Hoover Dam would be built today? I have intriguing things, and I want to get your intake on it. The Hoover Dam's completion was 85 years ago and was marked as one of the biggest public works projects in the U.S. and a win for jobs and electricity. However, experts say the dam would not pass today's environmental guidelines. The Hoover Dam harnessed the power of the Colorado River to generate reliable electricity for Southern California, Las Vegas, and many of the factories that helped win World War II. It also created much-needed jobs during the Great Depression. But Joseph Stevens, author of Hoover Dam, An American Adventure, says he doesn't think the project like the Hoover Dam would ever get off the ground if it were attempted today. This is his quote, "Worker safety rules and environmental impact assessments would make the Hoover Dam too expensive." There are also significant downsides to the project. Like I said, over 100 construction workers were killed, and the dam had a large impact on the Colorado River, flooding wildlife habitats and changing its natural flow of the Colorado. So the author noted that it would not pass today's environmental impact assessment. Flip side of things, the University of California energy professor Daniel Coleman says the Hoover Dam was a visionary public and private partnership. that it was essentially a government designed vision and found its partners in the private sector and partners in development in the developers of the big cities in the Southwest. So that tied together an energy plan and a development plan. The Hoover Dam was finished in 5 years, 2 years ahead of schedule, and cost $49 million, which is worth around $750 million today. The power plant and the generators cost an additional $71 million. However, the sale of the electrical power generated by the dam paid back its construction costs with interest by 1987. So this bitch was paid off in 1987.
Well, yeah, because you're providing power to so many people. People have to pay for that power. So it's like, makes sense.
So do you think it would be built today? Do you think this would be approved?
I think if it wasn't, it should be. Like, we can spend less money on like military things or other things. I don't know, political things, but I think it would definitely be worth it to build it.
I think it would definitely be worth it.
You just have to get past all the greedy, money hungry politicians to get it there.
I feel like it would cost more because you would have to pay your workers better, and you'd have to have better. You would have to have a much better
working conditions and living conditions. And
but yeah. So what do you guys think? Let me know. Let us know in the comments. Email us. That's a thing.
I think it was very necessary for a multitude of reasons.
No, it was definitely necessary. Like I said, it provided, I mean, one place was literally a desert, and now it's like acres and acres and acres of farmland.
And then Southern California, where they were suffering from droughts for so many years, could now have water.
Yeah, it's like a huge reservoir in a very dry area of our country. So I definitely, and the electricity it provides. I mean, theoretically, I think hydroelectricity is one of the cleaner ones. So, I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, so that's my story of the Hoover Dam. I know it's not technically, but a lot of people died in constructing it, which I had no idea about. I thought it would be cool to bring awareness to that and a little fun twist of like what might happen if it did.
If it did fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it never will, because that would be terrifying.
I mean, it's probably well kept, but what, 85 years now of concrete sitting underwater?
Actually, okay, so that's actually something I had to take out because it was lengthy.
Okay.
But concrete cures with water.
Oh, okay.
So the concrete had been curing for, they said it would take like almost 200 years. It was like almost 100 years. So the concrete's still curing. So it's still good. But it like went into all the like, I mean, there was a lot of information about how the actual dam was built. And I was like, I'm not about to put everyone to sleep. But the information out there, it's really interesting. I mean, the turbines and stuff, the way they had to build the dam itself is crazy. But yeah, so the concrete's actually still curing, which I didn't know. I didn't know that was a thing. But they do a lot of upkeep. They have a lot of tight regulations on it. But it's still, it could happen. Yeah. So that's it for this episode. If you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to follow us. Leave us a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Hi. Like and subscribe. Do it. We love new subscribers. It's fun.
You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with our username at TTATA Podcast. And in the bio of all of our social media is our link tree, which has our email. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, hit us up. Let us know.
Thanks for listening, guys. Next week, we're going to be covering true crime and fraud. Is that next week? Is next week true crime? Can we do true crime?
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to leave you with this inspirational quote.
Never regret anything that made you smile, by Mark Twain.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he may have been
like
in shitty relationships, but there were good times, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's important. Like, you don't have to hate the good times because you hate the bad times.
Right.
But the good times can still be a fond memory, which is something I've been like dealing with, struggling to understand.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, I think it's hard because I think you go through like a stage where it's easier just to hate everything.
Yeah.
Because you're still hurting. But once you get to a point, like you said, once you're at a point where you're not hurting anymore, I think it's good to just also go back and remember, like, yeah, we did have good times. And in general, I think it's a good practice just to not regret things because, you know, you might not have had an amazing experience, but it also helped you become who you are.
Mhm.
Like it helps guide you and teach you. And so try not to regret things.
Yep.
That's what I'm doing. All right, that's it. I'll see you guys next week.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Bye.